Senator from West Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to again highlight the importance of enacting tax reform. I listened to the Democrat leader's speech. I've heard that speech 1,000 times. 1,000 times how only wealthy Americans are going to benefit from anything that the Republicans can come up with. Well, you know what? Americans are smarter than that. Americans are smarter than that. I represent a state, West Virginians, who have struggling economic situations. And if I were to go out on the street in West Virginia and as I talk to individuals there and ask, would you like more of your hard-earned money at the end of the day and have a tax cut and tax relief, I can guarantee you 100% they would say, heck yeah, I can spend my money better at home with my priorities than what you're doing in Washington, D.C. So let's not let that argument rule the day. As I said, we're smarter than that. So let's talk about what this bill does. This is now my fourth actually in a series of something I believe in, which is tax reform for everybody in this country. My first one described the benefits that we will have on economic growth, something was not mentioned by the previous speaker, how that we've been stagnated for so long that economic growth will rise all boats. Every middle-class worker will benefit from this, and every small business will benefit from this. My second speech was about small businesses. 95% of my state are small business. 95% of my state is small business. Last week, I highlighted the importance of passing the budget resolution to allow Congress to move forward, and we did that. So today, I want to talk about the importance of tax reform for middle-class families and the impacts that this bill will have on them, the very real impacts. You know what? Raising a family is very expensive today. A recent study from the Department of Agriculture found that middle-income households will spend over $230,000 raising a child. Staggering, staggering. The Federal Reserve found that almost half of American families are struggling right now to come up with $400 if they were to have an emergency expense. And in West Virginia, where the median income is $41,000, hardly the wealthy, families are forced to make hard trade-offs as they balance their checkbooks each month. Expenses are going up, yet most Americans haven't received a raise in years. So we need to help working families, especially those living paycheck to paycheck. And this is one of the primary goals of our tax reform. We want middle-class, middle-earned income folks, hardworking folks, to get more in their pocket to decide what they want to do with their money. I mean, I raised 3 children. I know just putting shoes on your children is an inexpensive proposition. Maybe you want to plan for a trip or save for college. Well, to pay for child care and to save for college at the same time is almost impossible for our young families today. And the framework that we have set forward, I think, will help our families in many ways. First, it calls for a significant increase in the child tax credit. Yesterday, a number of my colleagues from the House and the Senate, we joined with Ivanka Trump to highlight what an improved child tax credit would mean for working families. The tax reform proposal would allow families to take a higher per child credit, saving money on their taxes. Money that they've earned, money that the families deserve to spend on their own, and many that can have significant impact to our families. We'll also create a $500 tax credit for families who are caring for a non-child dependent. Many Americans find themselves in the sandwich generation, where they're not only caring for their children, they're caring for their parents at the same time. So this will help those families. Second, the proposal nearly doubles the standard deduction, or the zero tax bracket, from $24,000 for married it raises it up to $24,000 for married taxpayers and to $12,000 for single taxpayers. What kind of impact would that have on a state like mine? Well, 83% of the taxpayers in West Virginia take the standard deduction. They're going to get a doubling in their standard deduction. That's more money for them to take home, to put the value of where they want to spend it with their own families. So 4 out of 5 West Virginia working families will benefit from that. That is an enormous savings. And even more taxpayers are likely to benefit, as the larger standard deduction means that fewer people were itemized. So we expect that figure to go up from 83% up. It makes filing taxes simpler, and it makes it so that our taxpayers can file on a single form without all of the extra forms, time, and money that it takes. And finally, most importantly, families will benefit from the economic growth that tax reform will bring to our country. This is probably the biggest impact that tax reform will have for working families. We'll lower the corporate rate, yes, for companies, but we've got to make our companies competitive across the globe. We're not competing. And what kind of effect does that have? Fewer jobs and lower wages. Companies know that if they invest in their workforce, if they invest in the wages of their workforce, they're going to have a more productive workforce to produce products, to sell products, to enhance the quality of life of their communities. Many of these large corporations that are scattered around our country really do a lot of work in the community service parts of our country, whether it's helping with schools, or whether it's helping with the baseball teams, or sponsoring a robotics team. So why does that matter to working families? More than $2 trillion in profits earned by American companies is kept offshore because of the flaws in our current tax system. $2 trillion. And I think some of those estimates might be low. Shifting to a more fair and competitive system will bring those dollars back to the United States. Those companies want to invest in our country because they know that we have the safest, safest investments, we have the most technologically advanced, and we have got the best workforce. And this is great news for American families. The White House Council on Economic Advisors estimates that lowering that tax rate, that corporate tax rate, from 35 to 20, could increase the pay for the average American by about $4,000. At my small business roundtable, when I asked, what would you do with tax relief? The first thing she said was raise the wages of my 7 employees. So I think that this would be good news for working families, certainly good news for 50% of the West Virginia workers who work in small business. We need to make sure that we work together, that we target our tax relief to middle-class families. Mr. President, you and I were at lunch the other day with the President. Priority 1, the President said, this tax cut must be targeted to the middle class, the working families in this country. And that's what this bill has put forward. Larger tax credit, larger standard deduction, unlocking the wages by lowering the competitive tax rate. And despite our hard work, too many middle-class families are falling behind, and we want to make sure that trend stops. So all of us, I think, can join together. This is going to go through committee. Both parties will have lots of opportunity to weigh in, and I look forward to looking into the eyes of the working men and women in my state and saying, not only is help on the way, but help is here. Thank you so much.